How many times this week have you said you were firefighting? It's the universal badge of honor for the busy executive, running from one crisis to the next, heroically dousing the flames. But what if I told you that real firefighters almost never do that? Today, we're going beyond the surface fix and learning to dig to the root. This isn't about working harder, it's about thinking deeper. It's the art of ignoring the spectacular, distracting flames to find the often small, hidden thing that's actually feeding the fire. We'll learn from ancient firefighters, uncover computer that rewrote history, and unpack a Slavic myth that holds the secret to solving your most immortal problems. Because the most effective leaders aren't the best firefighters, they are the best detectives. Let's start by dismantling our favorite business cliché.
When Rome burned, how real firefighters actually work.
Right, so everyone loves saying they're firefighting at work. Running around like headless chickens, spraying water at problems, feeling properly heroic. But here is the thing that'll make you think. Actual firefighters don't just hose down flames like maniacs. They understand fire. And that understanding came from watching entire cities burn to the ground. Rome, 64 AD. Half the bloody city is on fire. And what are people doing? Forming bucket brigades like it's some village fete gone wrong. Hand to hand, splash to splash, hoping for the best. Pure desperation. The fire couldn't give a shit about their teamwork. It ate half of Rome anyway. Jump to London, 1666. Same mental approach, bigger disaster. 13,000 houses gone. 87 churches, ash. All because people kept throwing water at the pretty flames instead of asking why everything kept catching fire in the first place. That's when someone finally had a proper thing. After watching city after city turn into bonfires, they stopped asking, how do we put this out? And started asking, what if we actually understood how this works? Enter the Rome Vigiles, the world's first firefighters who weren't complete monks. But here is what made them different. They didn't just carry buckets. They brought access to hack away fuel before fire could reach out. They used proper pumps to aim water where it mattered, not just fling it about randomly. Best bet, they patrolled. They actually looked for trouble before it started. Well, like adults. Real firefighters figure out the fire triangle: fuel, oxygen, heat. Kill any of those and your fire dies like a wet campfire. But here is the clever part. They also understood how fire spreads. Sometimes they'd tear down perfectly good buildings just to cut off the fire's path. Here is the illusion of knowing. We think firefighting means running around, spraying water at whatever's currently burning. But actual firefighters spend most of their time figuring out what feeds fires and cutting off those supply lines before anything starts smoking. So, the secret to real firefighting, as we've just learned, isn't fighting the flames. It's understanding and removing the fuel. It's a fundamental shift from reacting to the symptom to diagnosing the system. This same error, mistaking the visible for the important, doesn't just happen in a crisis. It can happen in the quiet halls of a museum where the assumptions of experts can blind them for decades, hiding a discovery that could rewrite history itself.
The ancient computer, rewriting history.
You are a sponge diver in 1900, exploring a shipwreck off the coast of Greece. Among the marble statues and ancient coins, you find what looks like a corroded lump of bronze. You hand it over to archaeologists who take one look and essentially say, meh, probably just some old navigational tool. That meh moment costed us a century of understanding. Because that corroded lump, it was the world's first computer. The Antikythera mechanism sat in storage for decades, dismissed as unremarkable ancient junk. Experts had done what experts do. They categorized it quickly based on their assumptions. Greeks made beautiful pottery and impressive buildings, sure, but sophisticated mechanical computers? Oh, come on, don't be ridiculous. This thinking made perfect sense. Everyone knew the timeline. Complex geared mechanisms weren't invented until the Renaissance, over 1,000 years later. But a few stubborn researchers couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. So they did what surface thinkers never do. They kept digging. Decades of painstaking work followed. Fragment by fragment, the true nature of this device emerged. And the revelation? Absolutely staggering. This 2,000-plus-year-old machine could predict planetary positions, calculate eclipses, and even determine the dates of Olympic Games with astronomical precision. It contained over 30 bronze gears working in perfect harmony, engineering sophistication that supposedly didn't exist for another millennium. Think about what almost happened here. The most sophisticated piece of ancient technology ever discovered nearly remained just some old navigational garbage, because experts trusted their initial assumption. The researchers who finally cracked the mystery didn't have that equipment. They had better questions. Instead of asking, what is this simple thing? They asked, what if this thing isn't simple at all? That one question demolished 1,000 years of assumed technological progression. Sometimes the most revolutionary discoveries are hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone stubborn enough to look beyond the surface through the illusion of knowledge. The researchers of the Antikythera mechanism had to metaphorically peel back layers of collusion, but more importantly, layers of assumption. This process of getting to a deeper truth by removing the outer shells has the perfect physical symbol, one that teaches us that the same object can hold vastly different meanings depending on how you look at it. It's a doll that also happens to be a perfect metaphor for root cause analysis.
The Matryoshka Mindbender. Why you keep solving yesterday's problems.
Right, so you are putting out fires again. Same shit, different day. But what if you are not solving anything? What if you're just really, really good at being fooled by your problems? Ever thought they can actually take over you? So, there is this bloke, Vasily something, carving wooden dolls that later became the symbol of Mother Russia, actually originated in Japan. Who knew? Buddhist monks had been making nested dolls for centuries. Each layer was a step revealing deeper truth within. It was a metaphor for the layers of understanding. You keep going until you hit enlightenment at the tiny, tiny core. So, the Russian guy gets the nesting doll from a curious patron of art who sends the deeper meaning, the idea of something precious held within something larger, and crafts his own version. He carves a rosy-cheeked Russian peasant girl in a vibrant dress holding a coaster. Same nested design, completely different story. The very first Matryoshka set consisted of 8 dolls and won a bronze medal at the 1900 Exposition Universelle in Paris, making it world famous. But in Russia, it became a symbol of motherhood, fertility, and family unity. Physical generations, not spiritual layers. Here, where it gets interesting. Identical structure, totally different meaning. The Japanese saw wisdom layers. The Russians saw family trees. Both looked at the exact same thing and created completely different realities. And that's the mind bender right here. We don't see problems. We see what we expect to see. Your crisis isn't a crisis. It's just the outermost layer of something you've been ignoring for months, maybe years. This is the illusion of knowing, that smug feeling you get when you fixed something that was never broken in the first place. You are polishing the pretty outside door while the real issue sits there, laughing at you from the center. The Japanese got it. Real answers live in the smallest, most overlooked places. Everything else, just inherited assumptions, disguised as urgent problems. The Matryoshka doll teaches us to look through the layers. But what if those layers aren't neat and simple? What if they are chaotic, confusing, and deliberately misleading maze? What do you do when you face a problem that seems to have no solution? A problem that feels truly immortal. Ancient storytellers had a framework for that. A myth about a villain who couldn't be killed, because the key to his demise wasn't where anyone thought to look.
The Immortal prick. Why your worst problems just won't die.
Right, so you've got that problem. You know the one. The bloody thing that just won't die. Throw money at it, reorganize your entire life around it, hire every expert in the book, and they just sit there, grinning, like some immortal pain in the backside. Ancient Slavic people had a name for this, Koshchei the Deathless. So, picture the most annoying villain ever, a sorcerer who literally cannot be killed because he's too clever for his own good. His death? Not in his body, obviously. That would be too easy. This sneaky git hid it in the most ridiculous treasure hunt you've ever heard of. Promise. Want to kill him? Sure. Just sail through some mystery island nobody talks about. Find one specific oak tree among thousands. Dig up an iron chest that's been buried for centuries. So you open the chest and the hair explodes out like it's been shot from a cannon. Catch that. Inside the hair, a duck starts flapping around like it's lost its mind. Catch that too. Inside the duck, an egg. Seems harmless enough, right? Wrong. Inside that egg sits a tiny needle. The most unassuming little thing you've ever seen. Break that needle and Koshchei, for all his power and immortality, drops dead instantly. Easy peasy. Here is what those old storytellers knew that we've completely forgotten. The thing making your problem immortal is never what you think it is. That massive, terrifying challenge eating your life. That's just Koshchei's body. That's like trying to fight the deathless villain directly. Good luck with that. The true death of the problem is often hidden, protected by the layers of symptoms. The island might be a systemic flaw. The oak tree, a deeply ingrained process. Then the cascading effects, the daily frustration, the visible issues that distract us. But buried deep within them, often small and seemingly insignificant, is that needle, the root cause, the single fragile point that once identified and addressed collapses the entire structure of the problem. Welcome to the illusion of knowledge. The real firefighters who looked for the fuel, not the flame. The persistent researchers who looked past the corrosion to find a computer. The wisdom of the Matryoshka doll reminding us to peel back the layers. And the myth of Koshchei the Deathless, which teaches us that the most powerful problems often have the smallest, most hidden vulnerabilities. Each story points to the same truth. Digging to the root is not a frantic activity. It's a deliberate, often difficult investigation. It requires us to abandon our assumptions, question the obvious, and have the patience to follow the clues, no matter how deep they lead. The goal is not to be a better firefighter. The goal is to find the needle. Because once you find it, the immortal problem simply ceases to be.